And we're live. Hello, everyone. How's it going? Max with BuzzTox here, and I'm back with another live stream for Westworld Season 4, Episode 2. I got it. Awesome. Yeah, this was an interesting time. I know in terms of the live stream, last time I picked, I think it was 7:30 on Wednesday. And then I realized that Wednesdays are actually a crazy time for me because I have the gym. So I just finished a workout. Holy, there I am. Yeah, so I just finished a workout. I didn't really have any time to change. I just rolled up. Another thing too is I've had a busy week, so I wasn't able to actually watch the episode that's playing right now. I got to watch maybe about 20 minutes of it to kind of do more of a deep dive analysis. Like, for example, one of you mentioned in the comment section, and you see right here, Clementine takes the new flower and puts it with the other wilted ones, showing that she's in some type of a loop. So there's all those little kind of Easter eggs and hints that they leave us for the show. So yeah, I'm excited to dive into the episode. What I will say is this is the beginning of me trying to figure out how we're going to handle live streams on the channel. I might start pushing them maybe Thursday. That way I can get a breakdown video before, and then we finish off with a live stream. And then also this week, we're going to finish off with Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 7 reaction, where I'm going to go through and give my thoughts on that episode. The last one was pretty fun. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, but who is in the chat? I think it's going to take a bit of time to get people in, and it's going to take a while to get back to the scale at which we were. But everyone who's here, thank you so much for coming. We got the programmer of video games, buddy. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for being here. We have Richard Cheney. Thanks for being here, and thanks for being there last time as well. Definitely need my coffee. But I think I've said everything. In terms of my review of this episode, there are some things that I watch in my review where I can't believe I missed it, or my thoughts on it. I was still kind of, I was still a bit confused in terms of the fly. And, for example, when the woman gets shot in the head and you see black ooze kind of coming out of her brain, I thought that was just blood, but it was the coloring of just the shot and the angle and yada yada. But then someone in the comments pointed out that no, it's like black ooze, and then I watched it again and it did have like a black corruption kind of look to it. So little things like that, we're starting to see where the show is slowly trying to go. That's another thing in this episode as well, is we really got a taste of Charlotte's mission. And I think it's important to know that she shares Dolores' experiences. And then she basically led the life of Charlotte and watched her family die. And she's Dolores, but now changed. And she has a vision for humanity. She feels like the hosts were subject to their games, their manipulation, taken advantage of by the humans. And it seems like she is completely gung-ho on revenge and doing the same thing to the humans as they did to her. So that seems to be her primary focus. I feel like there's got to be another focus outside of revenge. Maybe she's using the humans, and that's a whole other dive into humans and how they're using the park and things of that nature. But I think she might be trying to use the humans in a way to help, better the host, better her people. In this episode, she called the humans jackals, and that her kind is no longer safe as long as they're around, so she's trying to control them. But why not exterminate them? So she clearly has some type of plan, and we'll talk about it and we'll uncover it as we go through the live stream. Also, I do want to say, as a quick reaction, this scene was awesome. In terms of Westworld in the past, the choreography was never... It didn't blow me away. It never really did. Sometimes it seemed a little fake. But this fight seemed pretty... I was pretty into it. Especially that woman. She whooped Caleb's ass. And it was really good. Holy crap! And having it play in the corner, like it gives you so many things to talk about. For example, we're having William replacing humans with hosts, which is what we've seen since season 1 when Ford replaced. Bernard was a host, where you have people loyal to you who are hosts, and that's something that they're doing. So that's one side of the plot where they're killing humans and replacing them with hosts to have some type of political control over society. But then now there's the experiment that we see Charlotte come into scene later, talking about this experiment of humanity where this woman here, the human version of her, would be a perfect candidate. So there is a type of... It's confirmed that there is a type of mind-bending manipulation of humanity. I read in the comments as well that they were saying that the fly is significant because, go in the brain and start biting off certain aspects of the brain, which you actually can argue that that's accurate. I hear stories of people with brain damage, and it actually changes how they function. Some people have uncontrollable syndrome where their arm has a life of its own and starts stroking their hair and hitting them, and they can't control it. There's a story of one guy who got hit in the head with a bat, and he became a mathematician. This isn't science fiction. This is like real. So, it's funny because it seems so far-fetched, but there is a way. The show needs to appropriately explain that they can manipulate the human mind. And we actually are starting to see that it is possible. We see Elon Musk right now making Neuralink, right? And if you have Parkinson's or you have some type of disorder, you can use Neuralink to send basically negative shock waves. This is my bootleg explanation of it. And it basically nullifies your Parkinson's. So, I'm interested to see what rabbit hole they go down. All in all, the way I always looked at humans is, they talk about Caleb as being an outlier. Sure, but the thesis the hosts, the show, had in the past, as well as Ford, is that humans, this is as good as we're going to get. In season 1, episode 1, Ford said, this is as good as we're going to get. We've cured every disease, every ailment. The humans are done. Because the reality is that what is the definition of free will? You are truly free if you can change your fundamental drives. You're free if you can change your core drives. And their thesis was humanity can never change their core drives because their core drive is survival. Their core drive is reproduction. We are enslaved to these biological constraints, which is what I wish they stayed on that thesis rather than bringing in Caleb and saying that people can be outliers and da-da-da-da-da. I actually like the simplistic version of more of a biological explanation of humanity, which would explain the door and passing over into a host body and what makes you a great candidate if you truly are an outlier and if you shed that survival-based cognition, right? But anyways, that's my rant. Let's get into the chat. So Programmer says, do you think we will see multiple timelines this season? Yes, I do. I have a couple theories I can get into. Like I said before, my initial reaction is, like, in the featurettes, we have Evan Rachel Wood saying that she plays a human. I don't buy it. It doesn't make any sense. And we can talk about it more if you want. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But to me, it just doesn't add up. I think Dolores is in the future. And I said that in in episode 1. And then in this episode, we saw that she arrived to the Hope Mental Health Center that Peter Myers donated to, and it closed years ago, which to me even further confirms that she is in this future. But I actually don't think we know the true extent to the future that she's in. I think she is very, very far in the future, and I think that Caleb and Maeve are in the present. I'd be willing to argue that we see William and we see Maeve and Caleb. They're all existing in the same timeline, and that's the tower. So their mission, William and Charlotte's mission, is to basically manipulate, control humans. I think they are building parks to try and put humans in them. That sounds like something messed up that Charlotte would do as an act of revenge. And I think we're seeing the beginning stages of it. So, what are the beginning stages of the plan? First of all, Charlotte and William, they both need to open more parks. And that's what this episode touched on a ton, is government regulation, plan 1. And they're slowly starting to get that plan rolling. We see that plan start to take effect at the end of this episode when William opens the park that's based on the 1920s, right? And I think you could argue these people in this park might not even be hosts. They're going to be experimental centers where, just like the senator's wife, that she was being controlled, and then she's like, what happened to my horses? She was completely being manipulated. These parks are going to have humans in them, and they are going to be, just like for 30 years, they were refining host code. Now they're going to be making parks and refining the human brain, right? Completely unethical, by the way. So that's the beginnings of their plan. So I would argue that Dolores, inside of that city, that's hundreds of years down the line. They built another park, and it is very, very far in the future. This is where we realize that Charlotte actually succeeded. She did exactly what she wanted to do. And that's where Dolores might be useful, you know? Maybe Dolores, who knows? Like, who really knows? I'm still not going to say that Dolores is human. To me, it just doesn't make sense. But I would say that maybe Dolores is living in that city amongst humans. And Dolores was the first host to truly achieve a form of consciousness. She's very important. A part of Dolores lives within Charlotte. And I think it makes complete sense that what Dolores is writing is happening to these humans that are being manipulated and controlled. And I think Charlotte is sitting up at the tower watching what Dolores does, and she integrated Dolores within her messed up story. But I think Dolores is in the end game of their plan. And I think when Bernard comes back from the Valley Beyond, he's not going to run into Caleb or Maeve. He's going to be running into Dolores. Or, you know, like they said in the trailers, that Caleb's daughter could be a main character. And that's because Bernard comes back, Caleb's gone, Caleb's dead, Caleb who knows, and we have his daughter to kind of fill in the gap. But yeah, that was a long explanation for timelines. But the programmer also said, I wonder how far we will see Maeve and Caleb's relationship will go. Yeah, who knows, man. I can't add any I can't really add any theories to it other than the timelines just don't add up. Like, you're telling me that 7 years ago there was the revolution or the riots in the street after Sirach died and after Rehoboam was destroyed. And you're telling me that 7 years that happened. And then also in 7 years, Caleb had his daughter and settled down with his wife. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make any sense. So, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I would say maybe Maeve has a hand in it. I honestly don't think it's a coincidence that Caleb's daughter could pass for Maeve's daughter. Like, hello. Like, there's got to be something there. We see from Maeve's memories, you know, Maeve developed a lot of relationships with Lee Sizemore, with Hector, with her daughter. And when she's sitting there remembering everything in her cabin, not too long after she watches her daughter and Hector, then Caleb pops up. So Caleb must hold some form of significance. And we see him injured. We see them go on missions together. And even with that, the timeline doesn't add up. So there is a history between them. There's an element that they're just not explaining, and I don't really know why. I don't know why Caleb doesn't know. I don't know, like, obviously you could throw in a twist that he's being manipulated, like this woman, but I just don't know, and it's not giving. They haven't really laid those breadcrumbs yet, so I'm not sure. I am not sure. We'll see where it goes. Richard says, are the people around Christina Dolores non-playable characters in some video game? Does she control them? When she saw people in the mental hospital, she says, just leave, and they do. Hey, that is a great point, and that's definitely going to make my breakdown. It's like what I said before. I think Dolores is in the future. I think Charlotte is once again using Dolores for some plan. Dolores is a very important person. She's the first person to achieve true consciousness. And I think it is very likely that Dolores could be living in a park years and years and years in the future after Charlotte and William have succeeded, after Charlotte and William have bought up all of the land that's been discarded, disbanded, whatever, after they have the governments in their back pocket. And it's going to result in them having a city this big. It's going to result in them having a giant city, and it's a city where they have discovered a way to completely manipulate and control these humans using this fly method that Charlotte explained as kind of prototype. So I think Dolores is in control. I wouldn't say they're NPCs. I would say that they're actual people potentially. And they're using Dolores for some reason that I really need to think hard about as the pawn in that. Maybe because you can connect it directly to her and William, in my opinion. William was someone who never found the world real. Much like this Peter guy who died. He started stalking this girl. His wife left him. He had a really hard go. Because after William met Dolores, nothing was truly real. Because the one thing that he fell in love with wasn't real. So that messed him up for life. And she changed who he was. Right? So there's an important part to Dolores' history here, where she has completely changed these people. And in Charlotte's mind, you could argue that Dolores built one of the greatest weapons ever, the Man in Black. So we'll see where that goes. But I think Dolores is a very important chess piece to Charlotte at this point. And Charlotte can pull out Dolores anytime she wants because Charlotte is Dolores. Charlotte could basically copy her cognition to another marble and just delete her experiences after a certain date, and boom, you would have Dolores. So no one truly dies in this show. All right, what else do we got here? Miss T. What's up, Miss T? Richard Cheney says, I already answered that question. Miss T says the flies will keep the humans in check. Yeah, that's how it seems. The only way I can really explain it now is like based on the credit scene, they're clearly being printed or created, where they're essentially like biological drones at this point. It almost reminds me of is it nanobots or xenobots? Where we have robots now that we can send down your vein and they can unclog arteries or they can do important work for you, right? And like I said, we've been proven that if you manipulate certain parts of the human brain, it definitely changes our behavior, changes our personality, changes our actions. It can bring a lot of problems, but it can also bring super powers. That's not a joke. There's a guy who is a super physicist mathematician because he got hit over the head with a baseball bat. So there is a way they can dive into it. And, if the fly goes up the nose, can weave its way into the brain somehow, then you basically have something that can pull the strings. They also talk about the sound, the tower, the sound. No one can hear it but, the homeless guy. That could be a thing too. where it's basically a parasite. The fly is a parasite that's planted. It lets off something, and there you go. Programmer asks, you think we could see host Emily? Yeah, I'm pretty confident we could. Especially since the last credit scene was really jarring, but it was William way in the future, and Emily's there doing cognition testing, which I find so interesting, because I think the showrunners must have done this on purpose, because I think the person who is using William for fidelity testing clearly wants him to be a villain. Because if you want the real William, you don't pick his daughter. His daughter doesn't know him. His daughter knows nothing about William. There's no fidelity test that his daughter could help create the actual William. It's Dolores. Like, it is Dolores. So I just... William's being made into a weapon. I still have hope for him because he's still alive. He's being kept on ice, which was a pretty great announcement. To be honest, I was pretty pissed off at the end of season 3 when they just slit his throat, and then we're just like, in a post-credit scene. Like, you don't do that in a post-credit scene. But it makes sense for Emily to come back because she's a significant part of William's character, and I think that... yeah, it just makes sense to have her. Diane Miranda, if that's how you say your name, welcome to the chat. She says, I think Dolores is in kind of a VR test or something like that. Yeah, it's possible. If you want to look into what we've been presented before, you have the Cradle. The Cradle is a simulation in Westworld that are for the hosts. And then you have the Forge. The Forge is a simulation that is for the humans. And that's some important information because Dolores went into the Forge and she learned that humanity could be summarized in a book like that thick. Which means that any person you can recreate and you can have them do your bidding. The big problem that they had was you couldn't print the human into flesh. As soon as you printed the human into a body, it would freak out and it would not work out, like James Delos, right? And that's where you do the fidelity testing and you see how long they can go without an episode. And then you have to burn them and try again. So they were never successful. So, that's it for the simulations. You could argue that Charlotte, being this Dolores who's changed, basically wants to bring the Forge to life. Make it a true reality where she can sit in the tower watching over everyone, kind of mulling in their stuff. And she essentially becomes Wyatt. In season 1, they said he built walls around the maze. He built a house in the middle of the maze and built walls around it so nobody could reach the center but him. And that's literally what Charlotte did. Which makes sense because she is Dolores and Dolores was known as Wyatt. So it's... The more I'm watching the show, the more I'm starting to realize like they had a plan and they're following through on this plan. Everything seems to be aligning up properly. So to be honest with you, like, say what you will about season 4 and like the viewership is dropping off. They're pretty consistent. So I'll give them that. Miss T says, could this season be focused on shining a light on human mental health, aka outliers, which is needed to make a hybrid possible? Well, this is so crazy is you realize that, I feel like you're an outlier if you don't have a mental health problem. You know what I mean? Everyone has a different struggle that they try and overcome based on their experiences or their childhood or their genetics or whatever. But it definitely could be focusing on that human aspect of it. I think the mental health that we've seen so far is a product of them being manipulated by the Fly, by these things that Charlotte is implementing because she wants to gain a control over them. which is completely different. Like William right here, he kills the vice president and replaces him with a puppet. The puppet knows his name. The puppet knows how to mimic, like an actor, this vice president, but he's not truly this vice president. If we use this experimental Charlotte method, she would take the fly, and the fly would pull a couple strings in the brain, and it would make you a slave, essentially. But your last comment you said, which is needed to make a hybrid possible. Bernard is a hybrid. So Bernard is the only hybrid in the show where he was based off Arnold, but he never did fidelity testing. Ford kind of reworked him and worked on him in the cradle, I believe. And once he got him to a certain place, then, you know, that happened. And then Dolores was doing fidelity testing on Bernard, but Dolores made changes on her own. She changed Arnold to Bernard. She made Bernard who he is. And that's the fundamental thing. You are your experiences. And there's some experiences like you just can't replicate. And Dolores decided to change Bernard, and Bernard is now a tweaked version of Arnold. I think the true thing the show is after is a complete human copy. What is the barrier to make a hybrid human host? To take a human and take that exact human and print him in flesh and make him a host. And it's like I said in my Door to Dolores video. It is somebody who is free of their biological constraints, of reproduction, of survival. It is somebody who feels like they don't belong in the world. It's meaningless. It's this and that. You can look at Caleb. You can look at William. I think they have all of these things. And if you watch season 2, episode 9, that's William's episode, and they dive into it huge. And William talks about how he never belonged in the real world. He lived somewhere else. He lived in Westworld. You know, the woman he loved was Dolores. Like, William is the only character who's so separated from reality that he lives in literally another world. All of his positive experiences are from another world. And, like, that's what I think they're going to dive into to print. That's where I think the end game is printing human into host flesh. Miss T says, what do you think is the significance of Caleb not choosing a hat? Let's see what I can come up off the top of my head, because I actually haven't thought about that. We had William choose a white hat. We had Dolores choose the white shoes. And then Dolores became Wyatt, and William became the Man in Black. So I think they were clearly trying to show symbolism that the park degrades you, and it shows you who you could be. And the innocent William came in and chose a white hat but left as a black hat because of all of his experiences of having everything he cared about taken away from him. Dolores turned into, you know, the Wyatt black hat individual because that's what she had to do to protect her kind. And that's what she had to do when she became truly conscious. In terms of William, he's not going into this park innocently. He's already has a history. He has a past. He was a veteran. He's been at war. He feels like he almost belongs there. He is an outlier. So at face value, I would say that almost represents humanity, right? There is no black and white. He's just him. He's a product of everything that he did up until that point. And because of that, he's malleable. So you're going to see him not be truly good or evil, right? And we'll see what happens in this park. If these are humans being manipulated, maybe they'll just have Caleb stay on his mission. There's a small part of me, I don't want to necessarily breathe life into it, but I feel like something could happen to Caleb that makes him almost corrupted. Kind of like how William went in with a wife and chose a white hat and then left as a black hat and screwed his whole life up, right? I wonder if they could do something like that to Caleb that fundamentally just destroys who he is, right? Um, which is interesting because it seems like that's what William wants. He wanted Caleb and Maeve, especially Maeve, to go to the park, and he got them there. So there is something going on there. An important thing too is Charlotte is overseeing it, and Charlotte is, I keep having to remind myself, but Charlotte is Dolores, right? So what would Dolores' motivation be? So you just got to think about that. Zephelia says, is that even Caleb's biological daughter? I would think that his wife's complexion mixed with his, the daughter would likely be so light that she could nearly pass for white. Yeah, hey, it's possible. That's why I just say they could have picked any actress, they could have picked any child, and they pick the child that would look like Maeve's daughter. It's not significant. It's not coincidence. It is not a coincidence. Like there is definitely a plot there. There is something that is happening there. His wife, I don't think his wife is real. I really don't. It just seemed so shocking from season 3 to go into this, and he has a family 7 years after. So he would have to be with her immediately after. So the timelines just don't make sense, and it does seem a lot like in season 1 when we followed Bernard talking about his story, and he kept repeating the same story over and over again, but all he has is his cornerstone memory. He has his cornerstone memory, and he has, I started working at Westworld. There's this whole gap where he doesn't know. And to me, Caleb, it just seems like, I have this wife and kid. This is my story now. I have it. But there's no backstory, right? So it seems like it's all just, I don't even know. Richard Cheney says, are both Caleb and Maeve not really hat people? They did record the guest behavior in the park with the hats. That's true. Plus, the way I see it too is like, they didn't go into the park to have fun. Like, they went into the park for a reason. Like, they don't, you know what I mean? Like, if I feel like the world's at stake and I'm trying to like save the world and I have to go somewhere, like, I'm not gonna play along. Like, give me the white one. You know what I mean? Like, they're not. That's another part of it. Is they're not just gonna play along. So that's another part of it too. Where it's like, maybe the director was like, Caleb, pick the white hat. And then it just fell so flat. Because they're going in on this super mission for humanity, and then Caleb's like, I'll take the white one. Like, it's just redundant. Diane or Diani, I'm so sorry, I don't know how to say your name. Now that I heard your theory, maybe people in the future are controlled by Charlotte with the tower and somehow use Dolores to right their behaviors. Yeah. And you know, this just came in my head right now. You know why they choose Dolores? Because Dolores sees the beauty in everything. No matter what. She sees the beauty in all people. And that's her base, right? That's why I think she is so key. And even after all the crap she went through, she still believed that humans and hosts could live in peace. So there are good things about Dolores. So, yeah, it's just seeing how Charlotte uses her. And I just don't know what Charlotte's endgame is. Like, if she doesn't want to exterminate the humans, she thinks that they're a threat to host kind. But she doesn't want to get rid of them. So, you could argue that she just wants revenge. But it seems like there's something a lot more. Where she's clearly going after some additional motive. So, I don't know. Richard Cheney says, will the real William remain on ice, cryogenically frozen until the far distant future? Credit ending scene? I think they're going to keep him on ice. Yeah. I'm telling you, man. He's passing through that door. Ford's story still hasn't been followed through on. It still hasn't been. In season 2, Ford said, William, I wrote this game for you. And you need to find the door. Well, at the end of season 2, they tried to explain to us that the door was the passage into the simulation of the Valley Beyond. You even had hosts in the show tell William, "I'll see you in the valley beyond, William." I had a theory on the door to Dolores, and I thought that was going to be the end of season 2. Little did I know, I'm pretty much very confident that's the whole story. The whole story is William pursuing the door. And that's it. So I think that William is going to be kept on ice. He's going to suffer getting updates on humanity crumbling, but then he's going to rise again with his own kind, and his own kind is the host, because that's where he belongs, right? Yeah, and that's the thing, is you can create a different copy of somebody depending on who does the fidelity testing. Grace does, Emily does not know her dad William at all. Dolores does. Charlotte does. She has a lot of anger for William, but she still has all those great memories, and she seems to not know that she completely messed him up. Like, she changed his cognition. So yeah, William's gonna be on ice. They're gonna keep him around, thank God. I was afraid they killed him. And I think you have the Man in Black as a symbol of the villain, but I don't think he's gonna rise as a villain. I think the end game is Jemmy Simpson's gonna be back. B says, "My theory is that Christina is a new Dolores with Maeve powers made by Bernard to destroy the tower in the distant future." That's an excellent theory. That's a great theory. Dolores and Bernard have a special connection. Dolores kept Bernard around to keep her in check on her worst impulses, as well as she has true trust in Bernard and his mission, and he wants the same thing that she does. Like, he wants peace between both sides. So Dolores and Bernard, like, they are each other's allies, and I think Bernard would totally realize the importance of Dolores and how she can be used. So yes, I think the end of the day for me is, no, Dolores is not a flippin' human. It makes no sense. If you're gonna argue that Dolores is a human, who? Was there a human that was biologically born that is an exact copy of a host that was already made? Or are you going to argue that Dolores is based off of this Christina character? Because if you're going to argue that, in the show, they established that Westworld was founded in like 2018. The technology wasn't there. Like, the future that this is with Christina is not the future that Westworld was founded in. So it just doesn't add up, unless they want to go down a huge rabbit hole in the future, saying that, we have flies, we can manipulate the human brain, that led to us being able to print a human brain. Which is like, at that point, it's like, why? Why would you do that? We can make humans now without the marble. We use a brain. It's like, why? Why would you do that? It just doesn't make any sense. Miss T says, "Is Maeve really able to control the host still? Or have the systems really been upgraded?" Yeah, so we had Maeve able to access the mesh network. She was so overpowered, she could access all the hosts. What else? She could do a lot of things. I think that's the way it is. I think they were upgraded, and now she can't control them. But to be honest with you, I think it's because the plot called for it. The plot needs Maeve to have a hard time, so the hosts have been upgraded. I honestly don't think there's anything else to it. I just think that our protagonist needs to have a hard time, and that's what they did. Miss T says, "So the fly's control can be turned on and off when needed, once perfected." It seems that way. I just don't understand how they can turn it on and off. To me, like, that's kind of far-fetched. That would be a stretch for me. Because if you look at this woman's brain when they shot her in the head, it was like this black corrupted ooze. Like, it's gross. It's like, how do you just turn it off and turn it back on? I don't know. So there's an element I just don't get it. Yeah, I don't know. I need more episodes to see. Jules, welcome to the chat. B says, about viewership, I think Westworld will be more relevant than it is now once it's completed. I agree with you. I actually agree with you. Because personally, I loved season 2. Like, I loved season 2. But the end, to be honest with you, the reason why I looked badly on season 2 was only episode 10. And episode 10 ruined the whole thing to me. But based on where this story is going, it looks like season 2 set up season 5. Because at the time, it's so jarring. Like, that's what pissed me off, is that they had an episode 9 was dedicated to William and his story. And then episode 10, they had him shoot his fingers off, and that was it. So as a viewer, I felt that his journey was for nothing. Doesn't make any sense. But the reality was, it was a setup for the upcoming seasons. Same thing with season 3. You know, once we see where they're going with it, I think it will be more appreciated. And I think that's why, like, Westworld season 1, I still say today, it is the best TV. It is the best season of any TV I have ever seen. Period. It is like a 10-hour movie. It is a 10-hour standalone movie with a beginning, middle, and end. Everything they introduced was perfectly wrapped up. Like, you could watch it 100 times and find new details, something new. Like, it was so perfect. So I was, like, such a big fan of it. But now, like, you're trying to make a series and you need to set things up that pay off down the line. And with that, you run the risk of, you're going to introduce things that waste screen time of season 2, for example, and you're not going to have any payoff until down the line. So I think that's just a product of having a seasonal format. Cedric says, I love your breakdowns. Thank you so much. Dan says, the opening of this season, then William at the cell that Charlotte keeps him in, got me thinking of, could the future society, all of them, be inside something like that, or was that just poetic? When William at that cell. Oh, I think you're talking about the frozen cryogenic sleeping thing. Could the future society, all of them, be inside something like that? Oh, this right here. We're talking about this right now. Yeah, I think it's possible. I think at the end of season 3, we saw something like that, right? We saw a bunch of outliers being friggin'. They didn't even address that. There were a bunch of outliers friggin' frozen. So that's a plot point they're definitely going to dive into, because all of those outliers have a chance at being printed into human or host flesh, where they can completely be, they can be a host. They are outliers. They've broken their cognition. They're not biologically strapped to the real world. So yeah. Oh, to confirm, Diana Miranda is actually Diana. Perfect. Thank you. Programmer says, I love the parallels between William and Caleb. Yeah, they established those parallels in season 3, obviously, right in the beginning when Dolores needs help and Caleb runs into her, right? And they started that pathway. Yeah, that's why I see Caleb, you know, he had the mundane life like William, and now he's back in action, back in excitement, and that fundamentally changed William, you know, realizing that nothing truly mattered and nothing was really real. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. Circustopher, what's up? He said all the actors have come back except Anthony Hopkins. Yeah, hey, that's awesome. I love seeing all the actors back. I'm excited to see Lawrence. He was one of my favorites. William here has a soft spot for Lawrence. In terms of Anthony Hopkins, like, I bet we could even see him back. Because to tell you the truth, like, Bernard in season 2 achieved consciousness. And so in season 1, Dolores was hearing Arnold, and she was following Arnold. And then she realized that the voice of Arnold was really her externalizing her own voice. It was her talking the whole time. I love with Bernard that he externalized his own voice as Ford, and then he realized it was his own voice. So, because of that, Bernard had to scramble his memories, and he messed himself up again. So they didn't address it in season 3, but I think you could have Bernard kind of find consciousness again, and you can bring Ford back that way. Yeah. Richard Cheney says, are William and Charlotte buying up land around the dam for a park? Yeah, so they were buying up abandoned places of land. I would say that, land is going to become more and more barren because based on Rehoboam's prediction, humanity was going to self-destruct in like 50 years or something, right? So anytime the population decreases, people congregate together, you get abandoned cities and things like that, and they're just going to be buying it up. And in order to buy it up, they need government control. So they don't have monopolies, they don't have all these regulations getting in the way. So that's what they're doing right now. But I think a part of it too was not only did they want the land, they wanted the dam because it was powering storage that somebody stole, which I believe was Charlotte, which I think contains the human code. The human code for humanity. Also the Valley Beyond, right? The Valley Beyond was sent to a longitude and latitude in these coordinates, right? So there could be a whole world being stored on those banks. So it's clear that they want that, and they want that to push this plan of, embedding these people in these parks. Yeah. Miss T says Christina getting hurt was to make us believe she's human. I think that is a part of it. And that's another argument you could make, that this is a new type of park run by Charlotte, right? Because usually they go through their experience, and then the host gets shut down, they get cleaned up, patched up, reprinted. And if Dolores got cut one day, they would reprint her and fix her, right? This Dolores hasn't. She still has the cut. And she's still accessing her memory or her reveries, and she's remembering how she got cut. So it could be a strategy to try and convince us it's human. Like, another strategy is showing us that she's cut the next day, so there's not somebody overseeing it. But I think it's Charlotte, but she has a different motivation in mind. Jules says, Christina's roommate is highly sus to me. Yeah, she is. She says some things where I'm like, that's pretty on the nose. Yeah, she said something that was like so applicable to William. She's talking about the Peter Mayers guy. And she said something like someone's not mentally sane if they see something as a game. I don't know, I'm butchering it, but yeah, she is a little sus. I understand what you're saying. Diane says, the Flies remember that Black Mirror hated in the Nation episode. I actually need to watch Black Mirror. I never have, surprisingly. Oh wow, we watched the whole episode, so I guess we've been live streaming for what, like 50 minutes? Joe Frog 91 says, I think Christina's roommate is guiding her in this park program simulation. See, that's a great idea. You can say that almost definitively, because she's the one who said, oh, didn't you see this guy who killed himself in front of you? He donated to this special charity, wink wink, and then Dolores ended up seeing it. That's a whole other thing I need to talk about, by the way. Dolores was on her way to work, and then she saw the homeless guy, and the homeless guy was talking about the tower and how he can only hear what sounds it's making, and that he can hear it and the birds. And then Dolores sees that all the birds are dead. And then she like freaks out and then leaves, and she goes to the mental institution. Yeah, I think they took simulate like there's I've seen stories of like flocks of birds just dying. I think they took some inspiration from there. But what was I gonna say? What was I going to say? Oh no! First time I lost my train of thought. Crap. But anyway, she's definitely being guided by her roommate. B says, what do you think is the end game of the show? Humans and hosts coexisting, or the Earth is populated by hosts, or something else? When I first, after watching season 1, I didn't think the show would pull back in timeline so far. So I think we're actually going to get a definitive end to this show where we know exactly what happens. And it's funny that he comes up on the screen because I see this show can only end in the way of like the next stage of humanity. In the first season of episode 1 of Westworld, you had Ford say that we are done. Humanity's finished. We've achieved everything we could have possibly achieved. And this show is going to end with the next stage of human evolution. And that would be leaving your bodies, right? So that's how I see it's going, where it's like humanity is going to achieve even greater things now. We're no longer bottlenecked to our biology. We have broken free. And not only have the select few humans been able to move into a new body, there are things that have been created that have also been given life. So now humanity has taken a place where it's no longer the worshiper. Humanity is now the god. Humanity is the prehistoric god who created the next stage of Earth, of humanity, of whatever you want to call it. So that's how I see it. And I see that we are following some characters. We are following some characters that will lead us through that, like William. William, I think, is going to be a character who is one of those next stages of humanity. And it's good for him. He's going to own all the damn land, right? So that's where I think they're going with it. Miss T says, what do you think of the purpose of showing Teddy first episode? I think as a showrunner, they were trying to, first of all, communicate that they wanted the audience to put 2 and 2 together to think that Teddy was the one who saved Dolores, just like he tried to do last time. It's almost like a redemption thing. Teddy actually saved Dolores this time. Last time he didn't. William shot him and killed him, right? So that's for 1. For 2, I think as a writer, they needed a mic drop. They needed something that got people excited to come back. I don't necessarily think they had to bring Teddy in. Clearly, he didn't add to the plot until later. But I think they did it for like the sake of selling the show. Get people interested, get people engaged, get people excited. Even in the episodes to come video, they had Teddy in it, and Teddy wasn't in episode 2, right? So they're using him to sell. But anyways, Richard Cheney says, in our time, how long was Bernard in the Valley Beyond? If the theory about Bernard and Caleb's daughter Frankie meet in the future, that would be around 20 years. Yeah, that's possible. We'll see. Like there's nothing at this point. It is pure speculation. There is no hint of dialogue or foreshadowing or anything that would tell me when Bernard comes back, other than all the dust. And to be honest with you, I don't think 20 years is long enough to get that level of decay that we see Bernard walking around in. Like if I had to like put my money somewhere, like I get the theory of Caleb's daughter, but I would say 40 years, like 50 years, 100 years, like more. I would think it's more, but I don't know. You could even argue that it is 50 years, and friggin' Caleb's daughter is taking stem cells. I don't know. You could argue a biological human can live to 150. So I don't know. Or 50 is not old. 50 is now middle-aged. Or less than middle-aged. And in terms of the Valley Beyond, what I will say is, like, the Valley Beyond's interesting because it is a place where you can see untapped hosts living in a society. So what kind of society would the host create? It would essentially maybe be a utopia. Maybe the plot wants to go in a direction that says that it isn't a utopia. Hosts need to work with humans to optimize society. So who knows? I don't know what their thesis is going to be. I don't know what they're going to try and explain. I thought that they were going to try and just exterminate the humans, but they're going into more of like more sympathetic to humans. And I don't blame them. I know that there are people who watched season 1 of Westworld and they had a hard time watching it because they felt like they couldn't root for the characters because they weren't real. I didn't feel that way, but that's how they felt. So maybe this is how they always planned it. Maybe they're doing this for the viewers. Who knows? B says, I remember Ford's quote about Mozart becoming music, and I think that's how they're gonna end it, with something like humans didn't go extinct, they became hosts. Yeah, it's like, you know, humans became God. Ford became his whole creation became the hosts. You become the art form that you create. So yeah, I think it's very poetic what he said. But Ford did not have a good opinion on humans. He called humans peacocks that use their pretty feathers but dig worms out of the dirt, and he put all of his money on the hosts. Chris says, in this season, who's behind Dolores' path to consciousness? I don't even know if they're going to dive into consciousness in this season. I think they're using it as a parallel because it's interesting, but it seems like they're leaning more towards the tower. What's the tower? What's that symbol represent? You know, season 1 was the maze. You reach the center, you find consciousness. That was for the hosts. Second one was the door. It has two meanings: the door to the simulation, which is the Valley Beyond, or the door going through fidelity testing, a host becoming a human. That is the door. Season 3, you had the sphere, you had the Rehoboam, and that was the artificial intelligent system. Season 4, you have the tower. You could almost argue at this point, like, the tower is almost like God. It is the all-seeing eye. It is the artificial God. And they might try and go that way, where they make kind of a statement on religion, where God is the person in the tower. God is the person with the answers who hides them from the few, right? So it seems like they could almost be going that way. So I think, we'll see if they do the consciousness plot. I don't think they will. I think they'll focus on Dolores discovering what her role is in this tower, and she's being used as a conduit, right? So Ms. T says, Ford set a host free in order to turn the world into a game for the Man in Black. Ford set the host free in order to turn the world into a game for the Man in Black. I would say that it seems like Ford, I think at surface level, it seems like Ford wanted to get revenge on William, right? And people would say that this is Ford giving William a last final stab before he dies, right? I think Ford's game for William, finding the door, was actually like a love letter. If you look at Ford's character, he hates humans. I would argue the only human Ford ever respected was William. He even said in season 2, episode 9, "I've never met anyone like you." He told him that. "I've never met anyone like you." Ford has such a low opinion of humanity. And William comes in, buys up the park, allows Ford to achieve what he wants to achieve. And William is so unique because of his true, undying appreciation for the park and how he doesn't even belong in the real world. So I think Ford wanted the host to be free. But as a final love letter, he wrote the game for William. And for William, it's achieving the door, becoming a host so he can always live in the world where he belonged in, right? So I think that's Ford's final game, is he gave a gift to the only human he remotely respected. Rebel Eric says, instead of using the flies, why don't they just make more hosts? Because there's something untapped in humans that you can't get from a host. Hosts are created by humans with no preconceived biological motivations. Hosts are basically free until the humans give them a cornerstone memory and give them a core drive, right? That which is free can change their core drives. Humanity is fundamentally flawed because we cannot change our core drives. If you take us out of this cushy lifestyle, our core drives are going to be survival and reproduction. That's our biological programming, right? So I think that's what's innately interesting about humanity, is that they are different because you could argue like it's God-given, right? Like it's Mother Nature's gift to humanity where we are stuck in these pathways of our brain that we cannot control. So I would say that you don't just print hosts because there's value in humanity, because humanity is unpredictable, and humanity is a product of what? What's humanity a product of? You can't say. I could say definitively a host is a product of a human. What's the product of a human? So there's untapped knowledge there, and that's why they're useful. Miss T says, could Ford become a host? I doubt it. I think if he's ever back, which he might not, he very well won't, I think that he would manifest in Bernard's mind. Or Maeve. He would manifest in one of their minds. Even though with Maeve, they didn't even tell a proper consciousness story with Maeve. But anyways. Richard Cheney says, have all the hosts in the Valley Beyond reach consciousness? Could they still be in their loops? Definitely they could be in their loops. I think that could be one of their main things. To be honest with you, just because of your question, it made me realize that I wouldn't be surprised if Bernard goes to the Valley Beyond and the society that they built is stagnant. Because, and this is what I was saying earlier, in order for hosts to grow, they need humans. And that's what they said, is to reach the center of your own maze, you need to repeat, you need to suffer, you need to experience. And these hosts are living it up, and they're in their loops. They don't know why. They're not conscious. And that's the realization, is that you need humans to give that push. And that's the irony, right? Is, you're angry and frustrated with someone like William, but the reality is the reason why Dolores is conscious is because of William. So it's pretty important. Programmer says, what if we see Ford one day, maybe in a flashback? Yeah, 100% possible. I would see him more likely to manifest in someone's memory, or host's memory, rather than a being a printed host. Chris says, in season 2's post-credit scene, William, the host scene, it seems suggested that this is the far, far future. How do you think that scene ties into season 4's story so far? It's clear that William's in a trap, and I think it's because he hasn't truly passed fidelity. In terms of this story, like, he's still on ice, which means that he is still programmable. he's still around. He's still getting experience. And I think it's interesting because whoever fidelity tests him and whoever prints him, like I feel like if they took his human code and printed it into flesh, the reason why he's failing is because they're using his daughter. He falls apart every single time. If you do fidelity testing with Dolores, then William will become a host. Period. That's my opinion. So I think really up until that point, for me, it's all the same. Like the reason why it ties into season 4 is because we see William still being used as a pawn. We see the real human William suffering. He is being exposed to suffer. Basically, he is in the hell of his sins, right? He's a prison of his own sins, and that's where he's going to be for a while. And that's where he's going to stay until he finally passes through the door. So, but yeah, I'm going to answer a couple more questions, and then I'm going to wrap up. We've been live streaming for a very long time. How long have we been going? An hour and 10. My throat's starting to hurt. Jules says, very true, which is why it really would be pointless to make hosts of all humans, even if you can't tell so. I just think you can't have one without the other. I think obviously the host wouldn't be created without the humans, but now they can. But the host can't physically be the maze unless they have humans or unless they stoop to the level of humanity. So they're never going to truly become conscious unless they become corrupt, human, unless they use the humans. So that's my thoughts on that. Diane says, did Clementine reach consciousness? I thought Charlotte did break her too easy. I don't think so. Like, I don't know. Like, I have a hard time with Maeve. I don't think Maeve should have been conscious. In the past story, they had Maeve at the end of season 1. Maeve realized that everything she read was what she was supposed to say. Everything she did, this whole revolution she did, was Ford's plan. But then the show tried to explain to us in season 2 that Ford gave her a choice to board the train. And she didn't. She chose her daughter. Which, to me, is fine, but they didn't... Dolores, we spent 10 episodes watching her become conscious. With Maeve, it felt like Ford was telling her to do all these things, and then all of a sudden she was conscious, which I didn't buy. So, I don't know. I just think I didn't buy it. I don't think... We don't need a consciousness story for every single host. But, like... Clementine's not conscious. She's William's pawn at this point. So she's doing her thing. Programmer says, I think Christina is in a simulation in the far future. I would say, I would lean more towards not simulation. I think if she steps out of that city, it's desert. I think she's in the real world. I wouldn't be surprised if she steps out of that city and there's the dam from the first episode. And she's right there the whole time. But we're in this beautiful, perfect little biome that was created by Charlotte and William. Richard Cheney says, Season 4 has a lot of callbacks so far. Will the 1930s park have an old Ford story? Old Ford story of the heist. Definitely. I think we see that in the trailers. Like, I think we're going to see like a bank robbery type thing with Titman or Tommy guns or whatever. It's something they're going to do because they did it in Westworld. They did it in Shogun. They're going to do it here. They're replicating storylines. Maybe they'll try and change it and tweak it a bit to try and communicate to us that this is different. This is somehow different and we don't know why. And we can start slowly discovering that these hosts are really humans. Maybe we'll start seeing them, like the hosts, when they access the reveries, they would cut themselves and they would get corrupt and they would like not know what to do and they would go insane. We might see a different version of that where it's like, oh, instead of them like shaking and like the fly lands on them and that they don't react, maybe humans pass out. Like, I don't know. But we're going to see some differences in between these. I think we could see differences. Where, like, if we see a host in this 1920s, 1930s world, it would be slightly different. And that would be, as soon as I see that, I'll be like, okay, it's a human. But, yeah, that's it. Jules says they miss Hector. Hector will definitely be back. Rebel says, what's your final prediction for the... Okay, so this is going to be my last question. My last question. What's your final prediction of the season? Man, my nose is driving me nuts. Sorry. Prediction for the final season, or this season. Man, I actually have to think about it. Funny enough, I haven't deeply thought about it, and it's hard to predict after only 2 episodes. I think Bernard's going to come back from the Valley Beyond. I think he's going to bump into Dolores. I think Dolores, instead of discovering the maze, she's going to discover that she feels like she's in 2050 or whatever the timeline is. She feels like she's in that time period, and then she realizes that she is in a park. Let me show you something. I think this is the end. I think this is the end of season 4. Basically this, where Dolores realizes that she is in this fake world. And instead of that tower in the center stabbing through the host, that'll be the new tower. And at this point in the show, like, Bernard, when he looked at his paperwork that he was a host, he said it didn't look like anything to me. And the homeless guy is the only one who says he can see it. And I think everything's going to click in the end, and we're going to see the tower in the middle of the cityscape, and we're going to see Dolores outside of the city. And that will set up for season 5, where it's kind of picking up the remnants of what was lost. And then that goes to the other side of the storyline, is what's the present timeline? How does the present timeline end? And if I'm going to argue that Dolores is in the future and that Charlotte and William have succeeded, I have to argue then that Maeve and Caleb lose. So I think Caleb's going to die. I think he could die, or he might be kept for a host. Who knows? I'm going to guess he might die. Maeve, who knows what's going to happen to her? She might go into hiding again. She might be wiped and taken by Charlotte. Like, there's so many things that could happen, but at the end of the day, I think they're going to fail, and I think we don't realize it yet, but William and Charlotte have already succeeded, and that is proof in Christina or Dolores' current experience. Yeah. So that's my opinion on that. But that is all for today. I'm going to wrap today. I'm going to do a breakdown tomorrow, I believe. And then I got my Game of Thrones video I'm going to put out, which I'm excited for. But that is it. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Jeez. Thank you, Jules. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Programmer Video Games. Thank you, Miss T. Thank you, Richard Cheney. Thank you, Rebel Eric. Thank you, everyone who decided to come into the chat. It was a great time. It was a long time. But yeah, we'll be back next week. I'll put the live stream maybe like a day or two before so you guys can see the time and join. I still don't know if I'm going to do it on Wednesday. I'll see. But anyways, I'll keep you posted. But until next time, I'll see you guys later.